Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. I'm your host, Jason Myles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. I'm sorry, much like people with their fitness goals of the year that stopped going to the gym 3 weeks in, here we are, like 3 weeks into January, and I totally backslid on my New Year's resolution to start the show right on time. I would love to blame technical difficulties, but I can't. It was just chit chat. I was just chit chatting with the guests. That's what I do. Pre-show chit chat truly helps the flow of these programs. Everything's different when you're meeting via Zoom. You can ask people to come early. Sometimes I do. Most of the times I forget. It's a me problem. Not a them problem. That's a me problem. But thank you guys for joining us. If you are new here, I'm usually on time. It's a very rare occurrence. Has nothing to do with my ethnicity at all. If you are a returning subscriber, patron of the show, thank you so much for coming back. All of us here at TIR would like to send a big thank you to subscribers on all platforms and patrons. Without you, we couldn't do this. For those that don't know, this is the Saturday free show. There is no bonus champagne room. It's our way of allowing you guys to get a glimpse of what goes on beyond the velvet rope. TIR VIP. We did go long on Thursday, and we went long on Tuesday. How long will we go today? I don't know, because this is kind of a bit of a hot topic, and these people were very affected by it. So, censorship in support of Palestine. Yesterday, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to take all measures to stop its genocidal campaign against Gaza. The court did not issue an immediate ceasefire, but it is recognizing the violation of Gazan citizens' human rights. Here's a quote from the ICJ judge, Joan Donoghue. The court considers that the plausible rights in question in this proceeding, namely the right of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to be protected from acts of genocide and related prohibited acts identified in Article 3 of the Genocide Convention, and the right of South Africa to seek Israel's compliance with the latter's obligation under the convention, are of such a nature that the prejudice to them is capable of causing irreparable harm. The international laws-based framework of how the courts define genocide comes from the Holocaust of Jews in World War II, and recently people critical of Israel's occupation have faced censorship. Russian-American author Masha Gessen was to receive the Hannah Arendt Award. The award is defined as an award to honor people who contribute to public political thought in the tradition of Hannah Arendt, the German-born American political theorist who explored totalitarianism. Because of Gessen's essay in The New Yorker titled, "In the Shadow of the Holocaust, How the Politics of Memory in Europe Obscures What We See in Israel and Gaza Today," the German city of Bremen also withdrew the venue where the prize ceremony was scheduled to take place. How's that for irony? That is just one of the several cases of censorship in the arts and on college campuses. And we must not forget that 27 states here in the US have laws that prevent people and businesses from boycotting Israeli products. According to a 2019 article in Human Rights Watch, the laws or policies in 17 of those states explicitly target not only companies that refuse to do business in or with Israel, but also those that refuse to do business in Israeli settlements. Some states whose laws do not explicitly apply to settlements have also penalized companies that cut settlement ties. Our guests today are also having their voices silenced because of their support of the Palestinian right to exist. Please welcome Kimberly Haley Jackson, community activist and BHRC chair, and Stephen Fernandez, an engineering and engagement specialist at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Welcome. Now, Steve is having some visual issues. That's fine. We can hear him just fine. Steve, Kim, thank you so much for joining us. How are you guys this morning?
Great. Thank you for having me, Jason. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Now I'll start off with Kim. Tell us what you do and what happened to you exactly.
Sure. So I I do a few things, but for purposes of this conversation, I'm the chair of the Belmont Human Rights Commission in Massachusetts. So small town of, I don't know, where are we, 27,000 people, adjacent to Cambridge. So recently we've had some issues around, um, how can I put this, educating the community around what's going on in Gaza, specifically in support for the Palestinian people.
Mm-hmm.
Part of our mission is to educate, right? So that covers like a broad spectrum. There could be, police brutality, the Ukraine, whatever, had not been an issue until fairly recently. So what I had wanted to do was to have a panel, two separate panels, one focusing on the Palestinian people, and then have a separate one talking about Israel. And the reason why we thought it would be a good idea to have it separate is because people are always like, this is a sensitive topic, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
The pushback was maybe, you shouldn't do this. Maybe you shouldn't educate the people. Is that really in your mission? And that came from the town because generally, like if we're paying for a speaker, we do have some funds available, right? So it was recommended that we maybe not do it in terms of offending our Jewish population in town. Also, when we delayed speaking on what happened on October 7th because immediately, the invasion of Gaza began. So we kind of waited on that. And when we did it, the pushback was, well, maybe we don't want people to have signs and don't specifically focus on Gaza. And the compromise was that we kind of talked about the 127 conflicts that have been going on in the world. We had like a peace vigil, but I find it interesting that all of a sudden it comes into question around, is our mission to educate? We've been doing that for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then also in terms of what it looks like to support the Palestinian people within the town, because that was something that came up where people who are Palestinian reside in Belmont and felt like they weren't supported, right? So it's important for me as a community activist that all people feel supported by the town that they live in. And so specifically as, a Black woman and seeing other Black people and brown people not being supported in the town that we live in, kind of struck against the heart of what I'm trying to do here.
Is there a large Jewish population where you are? You afraid to say it?
No.
Wink
No,
once for yes.
So I wouldn't say large. I would say significant, right? And I don't think reporting like not both sides, but like from giving people a chance to voice their concerns is not necessarily supporting one side or the other. And also like what's wrong with education, right?
If
Like,
you
are you just continuing to live in ignorance because it's comfortable for you?
if you want, I can just say really overly racist things, and that way you'll look like a good person. In reference to, is the
Not
Jewish population part of the 1%? Maybe.
nope.
Okay. See, you're an ally already. You're an ally already. That's if you.
Yeah.
This is a new thing. If anything happens to you from now on, anyone watching the show, if something happens to you at your job, just come on the show. I'll be offensive. You can yell at me. Therefore,
yeah. I just, I think it's just like the overall, like the silencing of this. It doesn't make sense to me, right? And generally, and I'm sorry to kind of go on. Typically, when something happens of note, right, that we feel like is connected to human rights, we will issue a statement. right?
Mhm.
So we did one about George Floyd. We did one about racism as like a health issue. We did one on Ukraine. We wrote one on the insurrection, right? Never had a problem. Didn't have an issue. All of that is posted like on our town website, right?
Mhm.
There was particular public interest around what we were going to write as it relates to Gaza. So, okay. We kind of took
So
our
you can talk. So there was really no. You talk about George, which was a super hot button issue. Cities all over the country were
Yep.
on fire, literally on fire over that
Mhm.
situation. And then, we don't have to get into all the specifics on the
Yep.
other circumstances that led to that, but no problem with that.
Not at all. Not at all. And
You can
I've been
say
on the
white supremacy 15 times. No white people had any problem with that.
nope. Well, I won't say that. So the only time we really had an issue and the pushback was not from the town. This was from our more conservative citizens around calling January 6th an insurrection, which I don't know how you look at that and
Mhm.
what else is it, right?
Mhm.
So there was some kind of, pushback from the public, and our meetings are public, people are allowed to join, not an issue. The town didn't have an issue with us putting out that statement, but this one was a problem. And we knew what it was from the beginning, right? So there was some kind of people within the community don't understand that as a part of a government entity and also a commission, right?
Mhm.
It just can't be my voice, right? So there's
Mhm.
a consistency that has to happen.
Mhm.
So what we did in order to kind of appease this was talk about this strictly from the human rights violation. I don't know how you're not talking about restrictions on movement, the death tolls, destructions of hospitals and important infrastructure,
Mhm.
cutting off food, water, healthcare. I don't care where you stand on this issue. Like those are indisputable facts,
Mhm.
right? So that's how we looked at the statement. We sent it off, and now it's like, well, why are you even talking about this? This doesn't affect Belmont. Are you kidding? Like you're telling me that there aren't Palestinians here, that there aren't Jews here, that our tax dollars aren't going to fund that? Like, what are you talking about? Right. So again, after, being in the business of doing this work for like 20 plus years in town, like all of a sudden this statement becomes an issue.
Interesting.
Something doesn't smell right to me.
Is there anything you can say to like make them look somewhere else? Like, oh shit, a cop just beat up a brown person. Ah. Like you can't do that. And then they go, whew, I thought I was gonna have to get mad about some Israel's
Yeah.
for a second here. Whew, whew. I'm just gonna go pull out my BLM sign. Give me a
Yeah,
second.
exactly.
Oof, catch my
Right?
breath there.
Yeah. I mean, I could, yes, probably. Yeah, it's funny because it's like it's okay if, we're talking about the good downtrodden brown and black folk, right?
Mm-mm.
Lord help us all. But when you
You should
talk
sing it.
about
I figured it out.
what?
And Stephen, this goes for you too. Doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. This happens again. Just sing a Negro spiritual.
Well, so like, if I could chime in, see, Kim
Sure,
lives
sure.
in the eastern part of the state where
Mhm.
things are a little bit different. And first, if I have to say, like, here I'm on here speaking for myself. I don't represent the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I only represent myself because I really don't know what I'm allowed to say. What could and I'm not even sure, like, on my free time, because I've had students who've made students of color, and
Mhm.
I can't go into specific, who've criticized the racism that they felt at the
Mhm.
university, who've then been disciplined on the private Twitter. On the private Twitter, they've talked about that and they've been disciplined. So I don't know what I can do,
Wow.
like even on my own time. But Kim, like where I used to live in Greenfield, and we have a human rights commission, and they complained about the chief of police who was convicted of racism, and other police who had like Confederate flags on their lawn, and said that they didn't want to give the police a raise, and they fired that person. They fired that human rights commission and replaced them. We had a bus where the bus driver was upset with a kid who was there with his father, a black kid and his dad, and asked him to leave, and then tried to run him over with a bus into the side of a bank. On that bank, they put up a sign that said, "Hate has no home here." Then the bank decided to take it down because they thought it was inappropriate. I mean, so that's that. So I'm giving like you. It's a different part of the state over there. So the thing about Western Mass is people say, "Oh yeah, it's so progressive here." It's like Pleasant Valley. It's like, yeah, it's fine for some folk, but like I never felt like I'm Puerto Rican and I'm mixed. Like I had a Jewish grandmother who married a guy from St. Kitts. And then it was my grandfather was from Havana and my grandmother was in Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico. I grew up with a Puerto Rican family, but I'm mixed. And I grew up in New York City at a time of like the young lords, people in the streets and stuff like that. I never felt so Puerto Rican as coming here because like we're such a freaking minority. I had like a group of people over my house. It was like Haitian and black folks. It's like we probably have like half the black population in Amherst over here last night. So it's tough. So I don't know, like, and for me with the issue of Gaza and Palestine, here's what happened with me, and I'll stop ranting after I tell my little story.
Mm-hmm.
I had the first thing that happened was I have a student who's Jewish Puerto Rican. She identified with me because of my mixed heritage. She told me after October 7th, like the day it happened or the day after, her roommate said, "You all brought this on yourselves because you killed Jesus." And then started showing these Nazi flags. I was like, okay, that's some messed up shit. And I helped her get out of her room. And when it went down, I had to walk with her to the Res Life or whatever the hell it is. And like, okay, cool. Well, she's got to pay $100. Like, excuse me, you're not paying her. You're not making her pay. And I let them have it. And eventually, our college decided to pay College of Engineering, not the university, right? But I didn't get shit for that. But when I was working with the Palestinian students and actually Jewish students who are protesting what's happening in Gaza, all type of shit, like to the point when like I have these hearings and the hearings I have is like Kim, you have a hearing. I'm not going to tell you who's telling you, who's calling you to the hearing. I'm not going to tell you what it's in regards to. I'm not going to tell you the nature of the hearing. But if you're found guilty, a couple guys will take you out and handle you. I mean, that was the nature of my hearing. It's like I asked, like, well, what am I being called in for? To say, and they told me we can't tell you. So this is like, I don't know. I've ranted and raged a little bit, but it's tough, and it's at the point when it really is like, not only are they criminalizing dissent because they arrested 57 people, like two faculty, two staff, two workers, and 55 kids for sitting. And so like, and then they are on our cases for speaking. So it's like it's gone past the point of criminalizing like actions. It's like we don't even know what we can say that's not going to get us in trouble and like harassed or like punished.
That was actually what I was going to ask you, is I saw that was a 57 people. So you said 55 students and 2 teachers. And it was they just wanted to speak to the chancellor about divesting from Raytheon, was it?
So there was 3 demands. And I absolutely agreed with all the demands. It was a demand that they the chancellor released a statement saying he denounces Hamas terrorism and stuff like that. And they want to say like, we also want you to denounce the atrocities carried out by the Israeli government. We want you to break ties with the Israeli government and military people involved with the war. And we want you to look at alternative pathways that are not with Raytheon or the military. So those were the demands. And it wasn't teachers, it was workers. One of the workers who was in the lab told me how she like was very upset by this, particularly seeing all the Gazans from the north having to go to the south, because it reminded her of her family, which was moved on the Trail of Tears because she's Native American. and she felt like, how could she sit back when the same thing that was happening to her people was going on, and how could she do nothing? And they arrested her, and they docked her pay and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she did a die-in, and they called her again for another freaking hearing for doing a die-in. And then the other worker was a person who was raised as a Zionist, and then just recognized this is all bullshit. This is all freaking dehumanization and crimes against humanity. So it's two workers. And to me, they're inspiring, because if we get enough of the workers, what the administration does with the students, what a pain in the ass these kids are. Good thing that they're going to be gone in a few years. But the workers, if enough of us get together, the university can't function.
What's interesting to me is there's always a kind of look back at the 60s, and we recently had Vincent Bevins on the show, who wrote a really good book, If We Burn, about protest movements in the 2010s throughout the world, and how they changed things politically in some places, and how ultimately a lot of them got co-opted by right-wing movements. And when we think about protests, especially in the 60s, and Steve, you say you come from that era of the Young Lords and the Panthers and all that stuff going on in New York in the 70s, the beginnings of hip hop. Sounds like you were there.
Yeah.
Let's bust out some cardboard for Steve. See if we can do some old school breakdancing.
I got my sore back, but I'll give it a shot.
Don't break it. Don't break it. But the university was a place where most of these actions were occurring, and also where deaths happened. Wasn't just Kent State where students got killed. They also got killed in the South. I can't remember what school that was. Was it Mississippi State? I can't remember the name of the school. But student protests are kind of part of college life, and I would think at a school like the University of Amherst, Massachusetts Amherst, that would be a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah. Well, so I was with some people the other day in the campus center. I said, okay, let's take a walk over here to the central part and take a look at this mural. And it's a mural of demonstrations and people carrying signs saying no war and stuff. So they rest on those laurels of yeah, we're so free, and no, but what they say is no, we're not stopping. We like protesting, but these kids were engaged in criminal activities. They were criminally trespassing. So they criminalized dissent. And what my pushback is they weren't criminally trespassing until you call the police on them. You're the one who made this a criminal violation. You could have talked to them. Yeah, I mean, what frustrates me is they were going to have a MLK celebration with the chancellor talking about this stuff. It's and I sent a message into him, it would be good to reflect on what Dr. King said about civil disobedience and unjust laws and why the triple evils, racism, poverty, and war, militarism. But that's not generally what they talk about in these things. They whitewash all this stuff. I mean, they whitewash their history of protest. They whitewash freedom of speech, and they whitewash our struggles, and it's frustrating as hell.
I think I want to echo that for a minute, Steve. You're spot on with that, right? In terms of talking about what makes good white liberals comfortable about MLK, and it's always the I have a dream. Nobody likes the activist king, right? So where we talk about fair wages, we talk about peace, getting out of Vietnam, and kind of same thing here, right? They are silencing the voices that are directed effectively by this. So it's difficult to try to get people to that point where they can understand how important it is not to be comfortable. It's an uncomfortable situation. And that's just what it is. And you figure out a way to work through it. You don't silence people. That's not the way that works. You know, I walked
Mhm.
through Harvard as part of my commute. Cambridge is adjacent to the town that I live in. You could not throw a rock without hitting a protest, right?
Mhm.
Always, never a problem.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, when students are standing up for Palestinians, or even if there's a whiff of what people consider to be a criticism of Israel, all of a sudden, like, everybody turns into Uncle Leo, right? I'm a Seinfeld
Mhm.
fan, right?
Mhm.
To Uncle Leo, everybody's an anti-Semite. That's not the
Mhm.
the truth, right? It's what you're if what you're doing is wrong, if what you're doing is a violation of human rights, people should be allowed to say so without being labeled. And that's what's going on. Like,
But
I'm not even seeing that many protests going on in Harvard against Israel right now.
but does it feel like, you know, to Masha Gessen's point in her New Yorker piece, kind of the politics of remembrance, and a lot of times when we talk about where we are today, we don't really center it in academia. You definitely hear it all the time, post World War II. But the post World War II international based rules order has a lot to do with making the ultimate crime genocide, and genocide has to look like the Holocaust. And for years, right, decades, Israel's able to kind of use that as cover. What is it about this moment now? Because this isn't the first time they've bombed the bejesus out of Gaza. What is it about now, do you guys think, where young people are very active? There's also so many people within the Jewish community that are very active in this protest against what's happening. What do you see in Belmont, Kim, where you're at?
I you know, that's a really good question. I don't know. I would say, hey, shout out MK946 social media. Like, yeah, I think that I have a 16-year-old, right?
Mm.
Does not care about politics at all. In fact, wants me to shut up most of the time, especially publicly. Um, but has very strong feelings about what's going on in Gaza. Um, yeah, I think social media plays a large part in it, but also it just for I'll speak for like young people, right? So
Mhm.
teenagers have a very strong sense of what they believe justice is. And basically what this looks like is the big kid picking on the little kid.
Mm. Interesting.
It's it's a very uneven um it's an uneven battle, right? And then I think for those of us who are older, kind of like a callback to having that immediate trigger reaction to 9/11, whether you were right or you were wrong, you're just automatically going to go bomb the shit out of somebody, and consequences be damned, right? This
Mm.
is what it is. I'm defending myself. Yeah, you have a right to defend your country, but you don't have a right to cross the line. And I think that that is sort of coming into the forefront for people
Mhm.
who are willing to see that truth. That's just my opinion. And I guess I'll echo Steve, like, as a private citizen, right? Kind
You guys, I'm going to tease the shit out of you guys about your PMCS answers. You guys are too. I just think Steve just came on. I just want to first say that anything I say, you might as well
Yeah.
have the disclaimer voice. Anything
Yeah,
Steve
yeah.
Fernandez says is not on behalf of the University of Amherst.
Right.
Yeah, I
No,
know. Well,
yeah. The problem with doing this stuff though is like people yeah, they want you to just
There is a
come out of your
reason.
face and like
Look,
I'm a person just like everybody. I'm a private person. I have
yeah,
my personal opinions and the way that I run my life outside of what my public persona is.
th-
Right?
there's a reason why I live in Mexico and do this for a living. I
Yeah.
am retarded and I say shit like that all the time, and I don't have a filter.
Yes.
So, you know, I don't say that with any sort of like I'm cool. It's just it is very hard
Mhm.
to hold these things in. So I'm giving you guys a little bit of a hard time, but there's also a lot of respect as I say that as well, because it is hard. Because you have bills and children and, you know, losing a job. It's
Right, but like,
that's why this stuff is so interesting right now, because it does feel like it's policing young people to learn how to be afraid.
Yeah, I mean, so like, yeah, I mean, what I've seen with the kids is like they're told, like, you know, this is going to affect you. You're not going to be able, like, especially in my college engineering, it's like you're never going to get a, you're not going to get a security clearance. You can't get a good job like in the defense industry, like, which, you know, is a euphemism for war. You know, the war industry. War profiteers. You're not going to get a job with big business firm. You're gonna, you know, your career is going to be over. Like, so they scared the shit out of them. I mean, and look what the colleges did, where like they like rejected kids, like kick kids out and stuff. So like they put the, you know, they instilled them with fear. I mean, the thing that I like, I agree, Kim, and it's like social media a lot. That's it's a difference from when I was organizing, is because like when I was organizing, it's like we had Radio Bemba, like word of mouth, and that, you know, you talk to one person, you talk to another. So things went a lot slower. But like I go to a lot of the meetings, and like, how should I say this? In my college, which is engineering, I find like they arrested 57 people, and I go back to my college, and it's as if like, oh, did you see so and so's lecture? That it's like as if nothing happened. So for a large percent of the young people, there's still like not as much awareness as I would like there to be. But for some of those who are active, like the degree of activism is a degree and nature that I have not seen before. The difference I'm seeing now is it's like I don't know like how well I could convey this to you all, and I'm not in the air, I'm with my screen being blacked out, but like they are embracing this notion of relational organizing and love and like long-term commitment that I haven't seen before. Like a lot of times when I'm in meetings, like, okay, so what's the first thing on the agenda? But they start off, they're like, hey, like get together with people you don't know and like talk about something awesome. Talk about something that make you feel vulnerable. And then they like, okay, here's our values. Let's reflect on our values. Like I bring something special to the group. Like, so they talk about connecting with each other, seeing each other. And if someone doesn't go to the meeting, it's like, hey, you know, you weren't at a meeting, just checking in, see how you're doing. So they're putting this value on connecting, on seeing each other as human beings. And I think that's like projected into the work they do, is like they actually do see the Palestinians as human beings, and they don't dehumanize Jewish people. It's like they're all human beings. When they say from the river to the sea, it's not like, yeah, we want to have Palestinians and like Bar Carajo the Jews, like fuck the Jews. It's not. It's like they want it to be like no apartheid, like what now Nelson Mandela, like objecting to oppression of black folk by white, but not wanting it to be reversed, like freedom for everybody. And I think that's like it's a degree of organizing and consciousness that like it's inspiring.
Are you inspired by what you're seeing with the young people at your school?
I'm inspired by what I'm seeing, yeah, because it's their commitment. And like I had a student who was going to travel abroad, was like a dean's list, a straight A student, and then the last freaking day of classes, the last freaking day at 4 p.m. God knows. Oh yeah, by the way, because you got disciplined, you can't travel abroad, and I'm going to London, so I'm not going to be back until your trip is going to be started. So you know, good luck with that, basically. And then I spent like a lot of that, you know, from that time until like New Year's, trying to like work out stuff. Like, and they're like, well, you withdrawing too late, so you're gonna have to pay, and it's gonna be like thousands and thousands of dollars. And I talked to the student, and the student said, you know, like I just looked at social media. I saw the pictures, people going abroad, and I thought that could be me. And if I only knew what would happen, everything that would happen with all the fines and the courts and like, and not being able to do the trip, I do everything the same over again. And that's like, you know, that moves me.
As it should. as it should. Kim, do you see hope in the youth with what's going on right now?
I do. I do.
Mhm.
The fact that these kids actually care about something outside of themselves is very encouraging. The hope is that they kind of take that outside of high school and college, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes that doesn't, a lot of times that doesn't happen. We see a lot of activism when they're younger and then they grow up, right? And learn about capitalism in a real way.
Right?
So their ideal,
The fallacy of the radical youth. Like
yeah,
we have to admit.
right. So it's kind of like you know, yes, I have faith in the youth, but if I'm being honest, also, I'm not picking on Harvard, I promise. It's just the university closest to me.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of activism on Harvard's campus, but there are also a lot of these students that are just walking past or spitting on homeless people that are laying around Harvard's campus.
Ooh. Ooh. I
So
mean, you're also talking about the people that are going to go work for McKinsey, in a few
exactly,
years.
right? So yeah, but yeah, I see hope for the young people, right? But isn't that the way of every generation, right?
Do we see hope for young people? I don't know. People still don't think very kindly of my generation, or I guess ours. I think we're both
I
Gen
mean,
X.
Jason, look at us. I mean, really? Like,
There hasn't been a Gen X president yet.
listen,
So
I'm gonna be 50 on Tuesday. I still dress like a child, right? So it's like
happy
I watch
birthday.
cartoons. So no, I don't know. I feel somewhat. I do. I'm encouraged.
Mhm.
Definitely, they're much more active than we were, right, in our youth, in some respects.
You know, I always bring up 2003 to people, right? That's the biggest mass protest we've ever had for an anti-war movement, and then nothing happened.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Right? We
Yeah,
always,
yeah. I was I was there. Yep, I
hey,
know.
that is the hashtag never
Yeah,
forget that I
yeah,
always point to whenever these
yeah.
things happen. But kind of throughout the world, right? We've seen um, some movements get massive and then kind of sort of get co-opted, and then they get sucked into parties. Now here we are, right now I think this is mildly coincidental. Here we are in the year of our Lord 2024. It will be a very big election year, and as one of our chatters, commenters, Kushlook, said, he goes, I feel like the Israel or the Dems are trying to use this. They're going to find some BLM moment. And what I gather for him to say BLM moment is kind of what the Democratic Party was able to do with defund the police. They never openly said, yes, we're going to defund the police. And this is part of our platform. Pretty much most democratically run cities were against it, but there was an acceptance of BLM that kind of gave this weird veneer that they were going to defund or reallocate or reimagine, re-envision, whatever re-word you want to throw in there, the way we view law enforcement. And we don't have to get into, to fund the police totally, but it does feel like culturally Palestine has won some sort of battle where kind of across the board, it looks like the majority of people are on the side of Gaza. And I do think it has a lot to do with the images that we see in social media. Elon Musk takes over Twitter and just takes all the regulations off. So we can see images, horrible images, all day long, full stop, no warning, no age restriction parameters. And this seems to be the way that we kind of gather our news now and see things as authentic and real. So as we're seeing these real images of people pulling, I hate to say this on air, babies out of rubble, horrible images. Us here in the States, we get mad because we know that our government plays a role in this with arming Israel, right? Western democracy in the Middle East. But what happens when you win rhetorical battles? We say on this show all the time, Black power succeeded culturally where it failed politically. What do you guys think is going to be? We don't know, right? How is this energy going to get funneled into 2024?
It doesn't.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay, go
And
for
I'm
it.
I'm a cynic.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. Like cultural wars to me, if you win doesn't mean shit, like you said, unless something happens politically, right? So you brought up the Dems, and perfect example is we're gearing up for this election, right? I posed a question to our Democratic Town Committee. I sit on it. And I said, look, if you're doing phone banks, postcards, or whatever, how in the hell are you going to, what's the line on Gaza? What are you going to say? They were like, we don't know yet. What do you mean you don't know yet? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at it through a human rights lens. This is what's happening. This is wrong. That's your lens. Period. That's it. I don't care how you feel about either state, right? But this past week, so Tuesday night, there was our Congresswoman Kathleen Clark was at the Unitarian Church. Very important that it was at the Unitarian Church, right? Because I mean, I'm not a religious woman by any means. I'm a lapsed Lutheran, but they, they're pretty liberal in terms of their thought process and how they move in the church. But what happened there, it was very, as these political things go, regimented, right? So you had to put your questions on note cards, all that stuff, right? So it could be vetted by Kathleen's staff.
Awesome.
What ends up happening, right? Because I'm like, this should be a public discourse, right? So for me, if I'm holding some kind of a panel, there's nothing off the table, right? I'm not a congresswoman, right? I just volunteer all of my time doing this shit. But 4 people stood up and were protesting what's going on in Gaza. Because this was a congresswoman there, Capitol Police were part of her security detail, and they escorted them out. It was like, this isn't the place for that. What do you mean this isn't the place for that? Our congresswoman is here. Our tax dollars are funding this. What do you mean this isn't the place? And they got put out.
Whoa. On
Tuesday, right? I should have been there, but I was like at another meeting. But this is happening in our own town. Like 4 residents who feel very strongly about it got put out and yelled at by the moderator, like, this isn't about you. Well, clearly it's not about me personally, but this is what's going on. So the censorship is not only, trickling down to, the work that I feel like I'm trying to do, but people who are just standing up and speaking their voices. Was it disruptive? Yes, because that will also be the conversation. But people have a right to public discourse and stand up as Americans and say, this isn't right. But you're put out by the Capitol Police. So it's laughable, right? When we bring out what does it mean to win the cultural war? Nothing when your politicians are okay with you being locked out of a church for speaking your mind. Doesn't mean shit.
I mean, London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, the Democratic mayor of San Francisco, has not signed on to, I think, like a peace letter, which I don't know what that means at the city level. But she hasn't even signed on to it. Like, no, I have larger political aspirations. I can't do this.
It doesn't mean anything. And that was also the criticism, like, you're the Human Rights Commission, you should say something. Okay, and if we say something, then what happens? Gaza's still being bombed into non-existence just because, some town in Massachusetts said, this is how we feel as a group. How's that going to change anything?
At that point, that's kind of back to, I guess, my original thought, and it's just a thought, right? I'm still working this out myself, but my original thought is, what happens when you win the battle of feelings, right? Like, oh, we're in solidarity, we feel, I said this, okay, now what?
Nobody care how you feel about black and brown people, Jason.
Like what? But what happens when that becomes kind of the main discourse of the day? And there's not, this ICJ verdict, we'll see if it bears real fruit in actually getting real deal stoppage. But again, the show will air next Saturday. But our guest, who is an international lawyer, said, these trials will take a long time. But what South Africa was trying to do was strategically ease the boot first and foremost with that trial. Just first ease the boot, then we can go to court and try to do something. But first things first, let's get some pressure off these people.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen, Jason, but the like with respect to the election, like so many people I know are turned off to Genocide Joe, basically. Like I could see Trump winning, and at this point, like I'm not so sure it's a bad thing if it were to get people off their asses and enough critical mass to bring about change, because I don't know what it is. Like I'm very frustrated that freaking Biden, like when you talk about defund the police, he's like refund the police, and he did, and it's like God damn it. And all that complaint about the border, we're gonna do something, and it's still rounding up people and still separating families, and it's like, okay, what the hell? Like, what? Why? Like, so basically, it's Trump policies with a nicer, a nicer face, I guess. I don't know. It is less racism. I mean, less
vocal,
racism.
less vocal racism, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
less vocal racism. Look, I live by a border town. I live in
Yeah.
Mexico. I was actually thinking about going to Tijuana today to do some shopping. I love TJ, but when I have friends visit me that are coming from Southern California, outside of my good friend Ben Burgess, who actually used to live in this building, I tell them just meet me at the border and walk across because it's just quicker. The border traffic is a mess, but you have to see all the refugees that can't get through. Remain in Mexico is still a policy.
Yeah.
Child separation isn't what it was, but I agree that just because a Democrat is in office doesn't mean everything is just all better, especially when we think about the border, and especially when we think about sanctuary cities. To your point about I don't want to say accelerationist, but if Trump is in office, does that get a fire under people? It really did get a fire under people for 4 years, if you think about what we saw during that time. But how much of it was just words and how much of it was actual action? There's only, I think, 2 places that are like true sanctuary cities where the municipalities will not work with the federal government in terms of like ICE and handing people over. One of them, which surprised me, was Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of their gang databases, and that was they were doing that when they had a right-wing state government, because they said, look, we have mixed families here where there's undocumented and documented people. If you have gang databases for one person and there might be an undocumented family member in the house, that means that somebody's got to get deported for really no good reason. So we're going to get rid of all the data mining that you've been doing on these people. And this is truly a safe space. But has that backfired since Trump is gone? There's a reason why those people got dropped off in Chicago and not San Francisco. 30,000 human beings got dropped off in Chicago with a brand new mayor that doesn't seem to know how to handle it. And the backlash isn't coming from the traditional MAGA white working class or white petty bourgeois, whatever we want to see. We want to see Archie Bunker with the MAGA hat. Makes us feel better about ourselves. But the backlash in Chicago, Chocolate City, is coming from Black people. The Illinois president of the NAACP said these people are like savages, quote unquote. And they're living in tent cities. I agree with you, Brother Stephen, that we may see a return because we only think in binaries, right? If Trump is bad, Biden will be better. Biden's bad. Fuck it. How bad was it under Trump? It was pretty bad. Is it bad under? It's pretty bad under Biden. Again, I left the country under Biden. Your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I think we have a failed system. I just don't think our governmental system model is a way that works for the best of humanity, for the best of our people. And I'm not sure what a better structure would be, but smaller communities, like more smaller groupings of I don't know, circles of people. But I don't we don't have a democracy here. I mean, no. It's obviously not a democracy, and in our politics and in our workplaces. I mean, I can't speak without being afraid of losing my job. And I live in I work in a public institution. Imagine if someone who works in a private company is there's absolutely no rule of speech. I went to MIT back in the time when it was apartheid. And I was demonstrating against apartheid, and I was arrested. And I was like, oh, this is okay. I have freedom of speech. And they're like, what the hell are you thinking, dumbass? You don't got freedom of speech. It's like, yeah, it's in the Constitution. They're like, no, you're in a private university. There's no freedom of speech here, stupid. And it shocked me. Okay, so we don't have freedom of speech. I was protesting about the Vieques, Puerto Rico, on the Boston Common. And I was arrested because it was a public-private partnership. And under the laws of whatever bullshit thing that they have, I think it was the Irish that sued the city to have the private groups could have a say over who's got access to public venues. But they arrested me for having a sign that said U.S. Marines out of Vieques. And so we don't have freedom of speech here. So yeah, Jason, I don't really know, but yeah, sorry. You stumped me on that one.
No, look, I'm not. Look. Kim and Steve, I want you guys to understand. If you were sitting here, it is a beautiful Saturday morning here in Rosarito, and we were on the terrace having coffee and tea, and I just baked this breakfast cakey thing that's very good, and we're eating it and talking. This would just be a conversation. I don't have the answers. I am throwing out thoughts on the situation because you guys' situation perplexed me since I scheduled this show about a week ago. Scheduled this show fucking with Kim, as a matter of fact.
He totally was. He totally was. Yeah, I had updated a profile pic, and it was just like a black woman with her hand being silenced by a white hand. He made a offhand joke, as Jason does, and I kind of separately messaged him and said, this is why I put it up, right? And here we are. But kind of talking about what's the solution, I don't know. I mean, it's a falsehood of free speech in America. If you're pissing off some mediocre white man, you find out you really don't have freedom of speech. Or if you If you criticize America, right,
Mhm.
all of a
Mhm.
sudden I'm a problem. You
Mhm.
know, there's
Mhm.
no freedom of speech there. But to me, like that's the highest level of civil engagement. We're like in a
Mhm.
in a a bad relationship, right? Like
Mhm.
Oh,
I'm continuously working with you because I want you to do better,
but
right?
but
And but you
Okay.
still, you know, you're still my cheating boyfriend or husband, right?
Mhm.
But I keep coming back because, you know, I think that you can do better. And, you know, in terms of this conversation about
Mhm.
Israel and Palestine, and no secret, you cannot, no, you don't have freedom of speech if you piss off a mediocre black woman. At least not in
Depends
my
who
house.
she is. If she's your
Yeah,
manager, yeah, if she's like
right.
Jill from fucking Starbucks, yeah, fuck her. But if
Yeah,
she's Laura, the district manager,
right.
you might get
Um,
fired.
but yeah, like you know, America needs to get out of this dysfunctional relationship that it has where Israel can do no wrong. That's not a good relationship. And in turn, you know, you have these MAGA hat wearers or even like, you know, good liberals like I love America,
Mhm.
you know, therefore I'm going to stand with whatever American politics, whatever America's doing, I'm going to follow it. But you're wrong. You're wrong. And you know, in some ways, if you tell them like, hey, if somebody came into your land and decided to take it, what would you do? But they don't want to hear that. It doesn't apply.
It w- it's also interesting that like here we are and organizing tools are private companies, right? Twitter,
Mhm.
Facebook, social media, the internet, which, whatever the internet was supposed to be, it sure as fuck ain't that in 2024. We are
Yeah.
a slave
Mhm.
to these private institutions. So hearing Steve say that he's got students meeting in person, I'm like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. If you're really
Mhm.
serious about this shit, you can't just meet in a Zoom call. Um, I don't have the Facebook page I responded to you on, Kim, is not mine. There's a
Yep.
reason why there's tons of pictures of some Asian woman that is not me. It is
Yep.
not because I have an odd fascination with that woman. We were in a relationship for years, but it was a page that we shared for a band that we were in, and I got banned from Facebook. They took me down and erased everything. All the pictures I had uploaded, videos of my kids from
Damn.
phones I don't have anymore, right? All gone because I wrote one thing that I was actually
Mhm.
revisiting. As I don't know if you guys saw in the news, uh, speaking of censorship, this guy got the ultimate censorship. A man was put to death in Alabama with this new
Nitrogen.
method, with
Yeah.
nitrogen.
Yeah.
It's a new
Yeah.
method. He's the first person to have it
Yeah.
done. His case is somewhat controversial because he actually won and then lost an appeal in the
Mhm.
90s
Yeah.
and was not supposed to be sentenced to death. And the judge overruled the jury and
Mhm.
sentenced him to death. And all his other people that he was involved with, one guy died in prison, another guy died by being put to death. It was a brutal murder he was a part of. He claims he did. He wasn't claimed. Now he's gone. He expired the other day, a couple days ago. And I wrote about the tail end of Trump's presidency to kind of show how tough he was on crime. He just went ahead and cleared out the federal death row
Mhm.
people. There wasn't many. And in 2 years, I think 13 people that were on federal death, and no one had been executed on federal death row for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
And he just cleared them out. And one of the people that he killed was a woman that had mental retardation.
Yeah.
She did commit a very brutal crime, but her life was also one of extreme brutality.
Yeah. I remember that one.
I put that up
Mhm.
and titled it from a Dead Kennedy song. I always title my pieces off music titles. And the Dead Kennedy song is called Kill the Poor. She was a poor woman. Like this man that just got put to death in Alabama was a poor man. He did this for $1,000.
Mhm.
You know,
Well,
go ahead.
Jason, those people just didn't kill enough people. Like Biden's killed 80 so far in Yemen. Like so, it's like,
Yeah.
once you kill enough people, then it's like I don't know, like they make you a hero or something like that. I mean,
But it's how I think it's how we frame what violence is. and
Yeah.
vengeance. What's terrorism and what's patriotism?
Mm-hmm.
And those two things we don't really talk about in this country fairly. Is January 6th a rebellious act of patriotism, or is it terrorism? Is Oklahoma City righteous indignation on a state that killed 50 people, including children? Or is it terrorism? Those are hard conversations for us to have, because everything has to be framed as, I'm not saying you guys agree, but everything has to be framed as good guys and bad guys. And if you're a terrorist, you're a bad guy. After the wall fell, we decided who the terrorists were in this country. I don't care what anybody says.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than enough periodicals that came out in the 90s to back me up on this. Terrorists in this country were not big business polluters. Terrorists in this country were white people that were neo-Nazis. Remember when Portland was on the cover of, was it Newsweek or Time? The most racist city in America, 1995 or 93. Now it's like the hipster capital of the world. It's still the whitest place ever. Right? Like that is, you know, we have in our mind what a domestic terrorist looks like. And granted, there's been Black people definitely got caught up in that. Even recently, some got caught up in that. But when we think about good and bad people, you know, kind of to your point, Steve, this is just a broke dude doing broke dude shit.
Yeah.
Right. And his life, he has to die, because that's just the way we do things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my kids at UMass are in this group called Prison Abolition Collective, and they're focused on like we need to like rethink how we handle trauma and conflict, and not with this carceral, vindictive, retributive, punitive justice system, and across the board. And like, you know, when you mentioned Timothy McVeigh, like I remember hearing like some letters that Timothy McVeigh talked about how he was in the Iraq War and he just buried all these people and it traumatized him and he didn't know what to do. And the sergeant's like, just go get a beer and don't worry about it. Collateral damage. Like the United States freaking created Timothy McVeigh. It was fucking, it was chickens coming home to freaking roost, because when you like send people over and like, yeah, just bury the shit, like bury them, like those cars that are trying to leave, like remember the highway of death, like just blow the shit out of people trying to escape. When you condition people to be like that, like just collateral damage, you know, the end justifies, then like, well, what the frick do you think's gonna happen? Like they embrace that. We teach the kids that, like if we teach each and every life is freaking valuable and like precious, that then like we'll have it, you know, we won't have that shit. I mean, we'll have like some sociopaths and shit like that, but like the massive like shootings and shit like that. If we have freaking communities too, like God damn it, we don't have like the freaking United States is so freaking independent. Like everyone, they're independent, like isolated individual on their own. I mean, what I grew up in was freaking collective. Like we're all there together. I got your back. Like you could count on that. Like, and if I'm not there, you can count on someone else getting your back. And then if we get like these like sociopaths doing the school shootings and shit like that, people know like something's going wrong, or people there to like support shit. But like this whole model that we have, like, so I don't know, like I guess it in a way it touches on what you're saying, like what's happening with the elections coming up. Like I don't have much hope for like our electoral system, because it's like our whole way of going about, like the paradigm is this: each person is an individual and a commodified. And until we like embrace this notion of collectivity and love, then I don't see us going, you know, I don't see much hope. The kids give me hope. Like I went to Cuba, and at Cuba I saw Sarah Shakur. I spent a little bit of time with Sarah Shakur, and she talked to me about like the difference in Black culture in Cuba and the difference in Black culture in the United States. It was really cool. And I came back, I told the kids, like, you all remind me of like Asada Shakur. You remind me of Rafael Cancel Miranda. I don't know if you all know about Rafael Cancel Miranda, one of the people who did like the shooting on the Capitol. Like, you all know that.
Okay.
You know the United States was bombing Puerto Rico when we're trying to become independent, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they brought that fight up to the Congress, and Rafael Cancel Miranda was in jail, and like I remember meeting him, and I told the kids, like, you'll remind me of that. You're that. Like, keep on this thread because you're gonna be those people in the future. Like, I have hope for the kids, but it doesn't happen on its own. It happens because we nurture them, and we have to like be that community for them that helps them to be those that collective leadership that's gonna bring us to a better place. Anyway, sorry for ranting.
No, that's a beautiful rant. And yeah, that is the only time Congress ever got shut up was Puerto Rican liberation protesters, and they also tried to assassinate the president. Was almost very successful in shooting Harry Truman. There is one thing though that scares the shit out of me, and that's the thing that we're on right now, the internet. There was a co-optive power that is so much quicker than anything we've ever seen. You were a hated man if you were a Black Panther. You were a hated person if you were in the movement in the early 80s in Philadelphia. And granted, these things were very regional. Now everything is very non-regional and extremely national. And you have the ability, Chris Smalls, to become a very large celebrity even in left circles. And does that ability to have instant celebrity corrupt the movement? And that's what's scared. This is just me again talking with you guys. That's what scares the shit out of me. How do you feel about that, Kim? You have kids that are on social media.
Yeah, I do. Yes. Yes, I would agree. Only because the problem that, at least I find with social media and like the rise of, let's say, like a TikTok, right? So my kids will say to me like, "Oh, you can actually learn stuff on TikTok." I'm like, "Can you?" I mean, like, sure, but only if you take it. You have to take it further, right? So I don't necessarily have an issue with, the rise of leftist celebrities online, but the people who are receiving that information, you have to be thoughtful enough to actually want to go and research that and find out what it means, right? So the problem is, like, you can cherry pick whatever you want offline, right? So this conversation that we're having right now, fairly innocuous, at least to me. Somebody can chop and screw this thing and like, I'm, fucking terrorist in the end, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a problem, but you have to kind of, you've got to figure out how to take those snippets from these online political celebrities, dig a little deeper, because it's more than like, I don't know, 200 characters or 30 seconds on TikTok, right? So it's kind of like an abbreviated version of, we talk about like what happened with us, because I'm an old woman, like when Public Enemy came out, right? You had a lot of kids who liked the music, actually listened to the words, and was like, "Oh, okay, I don't know who Asada Shakur is," right? Let me go to the library, dig a little deeper, find out what that's about. You know what I mean? Like, just as an example, I probably have some family members who get a good chuckle out of that. I won't say their names, but but I mean, it's true, right? But I don't know how much, I don't think kids these days are. It's easier just to be online and be an online celebrity or activist, and kind of going back to like meeting with people in person, right? And trying to draw together people. The good thing about the internet, right? And I guess there are some good things about it. Like, you draw people together from diverse backgrounds, but getting those people together collectively to try to talk about things. So like, if you were so inclined, to go on like my town's community chat. It is a nightmare in there, right? Like people are arguing, they're fighting. If you ask those same people, hey, let's go down to the community center, let's sit down and have a face-to-face conversation, I'll probably get 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all of the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't know. Use your powers for good, internet, right?
But that's the thing. Everything is a market opportunity. And that's where I think a lot of people think. I think neoliberalism is really in the minds of most people as forever and a given. And the market will provide, right? The market will fix it. We'll move decimals over on spreadsheets and we'll fix things. Everything is market relations. I was listening to sports. Steve, are you a sports fan at all?
No, I suck at sports.
It's okay. It's okay. You're too busy breakdancing. Sometimes when you got a pop lock on a motherfucker, you ain't got time to watch the game. I understand.
I did like capoeira though, but that's
goddamn. You just
wow.
Shit.
I like how you just threw that in.
I like to dance and kick people in the nuts. But I was listening to the sports talk radio on my drive to the Bay Area to visit go to a funeral, and I heard a former player actually say this, that the solution to fixing this team that was struggling was they needed to get a football czar. And I was like, what the fuck is that? He's like, it's not really a coach, but it's someone that has decision-making ability. I was like, dude, did you play in the NFL or did you play for McKinsey or Deloitte and Touche? Because who says the way to fix this team is by getting a consultant?
Mm-hmm.
That speak has infiltrated the most mundane of conversations. We need a consultant to fix this. The market will fix this. And that's why I asked the question, is the co-optation that easier? Because we always see avenues on how we're going to monetize a thing. And it could be a good thing, right? Anand Girdadas talks about this in Winners Take All. So many people at one point in time, Steve, you said you came up with the Young Lords. I don't know at what time, but community activism was the only way you were going to change the world, right? Kim, the only way we were going to change the world was going to be politically. You had to get politically active, be an alderman, work for a state senator or something. Go be a lawyer. How many Negroes do you know that went on to become lawyers? I host a show with one because that's how you were going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Did he work in criminal law? No. And it's not a knock on him, but we always have these grandiose ways in how we're going to change the world. How do young people want to change the world now? I'm asking the question. I don't know every young person, but it seems to be through, well, if I do this thing and then I make this money, then I can do this other thing. We're going to give one and get one. This big text showed you that's, hey, we're hippie communist or capitalists. We're going to be real nice with our capitalism. And look, you don't really have hours you work because where you work is so much fun. Yay. There's a ping pong table in here. It's not like work.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like you could, and then you could get the cafeterias there.
Yeah.
They feed you. They maybe have some cots there. They could call it what's the name? I'm trying to think of the name from Sorry to Bother You. What was that called?
Boots Riley.
Yeah, yeah.
Worry free.
Worry free. Yeah, let's just work in worry free. Yeah, there you go.
Steve and Kim, I don't know if you guys ever worked in tech, but as someone that did some work in tech, if you've never had an impoverished Latin person make you a kale smoothie, then you just ain't lived. On demand. On demand.
Yeah.
And you can say, no. Less kale, more of juice, more carrots.
Yeah.
It's It's not work. It's a party.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I do engineering, like in my like, so like people are into that shit, you know, and that what I try to do with engineering is like what I do community based. I call it solidarity engineering. We work with like low income groups and stuff like that because I want to show kids that that's like that's a way you could do it, right? Doesn't you don't have to work for Lockheed Martin or L3 Harris or Raytheon or whatever the shits they are. But like and for like to get back like with my rambling thoughts to what you mentioned about like the hearts and minds, it's like I think if we were able to get enough of people's hearts together who are like for the Raytheons and shit like that and say they can fuck no, I'm not gonna make that shit, then maybe we make a difference. Like because I've seen that before. Like with the Lucas plan, where enough people are like, okay, enough of this shit. Like we could actually use our engineering skills instead of making military crap that blows the crap out of people. Like who can make the next new thing that blows the shit out of like innocent women and children? From that to be like, hey, how can we make up sustainable transportation or like a way for people to heat their homes or, you know, stuff that addresses climate change? Like, I think we can get there. I have hope. It's fucking hard, but it's the internet is a tool, and I think like any tool, like it could like it's we have to learn how to use the tool as well. And like I'm inspired by the kids that I see at UMass, and it's a minority, but like the Prison Abolition Collective, the Students for Justice in Palestine, UMass centers, because they're not they're using the tools well. They have like their social media, but it's like it's Discord with channels for like their little groups. They don't have like one leader. They have like circles where it's like working groups and stuff like that. And they specifically focus on like not having any individuals be like the top leader of the group, but like having it be more of a collective.
Horizontal structure.
Yeah, and it's inspiring. And they come to me like, oh yeah, we know we gotta do better. It's like, well, that shows me that you're on the right path. Because if you're reflecting on like we know we're flawed people doing flawed work and we need to do better, I have hope. Like what I don't have hope for is people like I got this shit. Like I got it. Like I know what I'm doing. Like you have to be humble enough and self-reflective enough to understand that like you're open to learning and acknowledging what mistakes you make. And I'm seeing that in the kids. So I'm freaking inspired. Like I'm depressed as hell at the freaking repression, which is horrible. But I'm surprised. I'm impressed with the kids. And the other thing I want to say is my rambles. Like, Kim, you mentioned Harvard. Like, my wife knew Claudine Gay, like the first Black president of Harvard, the Haitian American president, the shortest term. I mean, fucking racist at bull fucking shit. Like, I mean, come on, that they got rid of this woman and that for what? For like not answering a question in freaking Congress. I mean, goddamn. I mean, like we should be on Harvard's case for that bullshit. I mean, because that's like people should be saying like this place cannot go on, like because you freaking get her back. I don't know. It struck a chord with me because that was just so we got rid of Claudine Gay because and no one like I don't know like where was the freaking outrage? God damn it!
Over Claudine Gay, I think there was a little bit. Kim, you were there.
It was a little, right? From the quarters that you would expect. But again, like otherwise, it was like business as usual. They got rid of her with the quickness. Think about how fast that took like, 4 months or something. And yeah, there wasn't a lot of pushback. The racism is just pervasive to me. It's wild.
At Harvard?
Yeah.
The devil, you say.
Good old Harvard.
And
good old Massachusetts, man. Like I grew up in San Diego and St. Louis. St. Louis is wild and open in terms of their racism. This over here is something a little different, right? We had just like as a local, just to like bring it in locally, an example of racism. We did a equity audit, like a racial equity audit for the school district. And, of course, consultants came in and it was a group of women from MIT that were running this equity audit that just so happened to be 2 women of color who were actually leading the community conversations.
Were any of them Jewish?
Nope.
He's
Nope.
helping you again. I'm helping you again.
And yeah, there were questions around their qualifications and questions around the data that came out of the equity audit. I was like, these are 2 women from MIT that got the information directly from the students, but because they're 2 women of color and you don't like the results that came back because it made us look bad, all of a sudden that data is invalid.
But how colored were they?
Get the
Were
fuck
they
out of
like
here.
were they like Latin? Were they Indian?
One-
Were they Asian?
One Latin
hmm
and one Afro-Latina.
Curly hair or
Curly,
naturally straight?
one
Like a
curly,
perm?
no perm.
Okay, so naturally curly. Because we have to see how colored they
Naturally
are.
curly. Like when you looked at them,
Uh-huh.
you knew they weren't Anglo-Saxon,
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
right? So it's like, yeah, you
They
know,
came in salsa dancing in the whole 9.
the whole 9.
Oh my goodness. And they were
Despite
like,
coming from MIT, like who's going to argue with? And I might add, none of the people who were arguing about the data were statisticians, educators, or parents of people of color.
Mhm.
how do you know these colored gals got the numbers right?
Right? So you know what I mean. So like when all that rolled down with Claudine Gay, it was like, yep, I know. You know what I mean? Like academic plagiarism is a thing, right? But
horrible.
and I'm not an academician or whatever, but like that just happened very fast. I was like, oh, that's and her failure to, I guess, discipline kids who were speaking out against what's going on in Gaza.
That's really what it was about.
I know.
That's what it was. Yeah, I didn't.
That's what it was
Come on.
about. when you
Right?
look, Steve's from the East Coast. You got black and brown people speaking out about the global South. You can feel butts pucker. It's really turned into Nixon and Hoover.
Yeah, they want you to shut up. I've basically been called an interloper.
Mm-hmm.
There's other things you could have been called that are way worse.
I mean, I'm sure that happens too, just not on social media. But it's this whole, it's just like this whole dynamic about, all these new people coming into town and they're changing things. Like, it's good to shake things up and have a little perspective and maybe think about people who don't look like you. What's their life like and how does it affect you? But like, I just think this othering of people and just kind of bring it back around to like the topic of our conversation and looking at people as individuals. They're never going to allow us to look at people as individuals and care about them on a human basis, because what they do is just group people in the way that this groupthink works, instead of looking at Gazans as like, these are human beings. You shouldn't have to drag out a baby to make your point, right? So it's kind of like the Roe v. Wade thing, where you always go worst case scenario, like a 13-year-old is raped by her father, so now she's got to have this baby. You shouldn't have to do that, right? It should just be like people have rights. But in terms of what's happening with Gazans, they're just like, oh, they're Hamas. They are people. They're humans. They are not a collective. An idea is not a fucking person. These are people.
We can compartmentalize who's worthy and who's not, right? We do that with homeless people.
And the first thing you do is you make them inhumane. You're doing the same thing that was done to you. If you take away someone's humanity and you label them a group, you're just like, this is Hamas. These are humans. This is, you cannot bomb out terrorism. You're creating what you would call more terrorists, right? This shit just continues. And Americans are so short-sighted. We've never learned. Like, we just got out of this. Like, you didn't learn anything after you went and killed bombed the hell out of all these people post 9/11. You didn't learn anything from that. So it's like, we're just going to go ahead and continue this.
There was something learned. I think the thing that got learned at large, right? Not the people that watch shows like this, but on the whole, that There's weird religious fundamentalism, and the Middle East is an area that we don't understand, and it's archaic. I think that's what people think.
Okay.
And they think that terrorists are an actual sect
Right.
of people.
All right, so like Jason and Kim, like if I had my camera on, I'd be showing you, like you'd be able to see like what I'm doing. Like I'm holding up money, right? See, this is what we learned. Like when I say we, I mean like the people who rule the country, like the corporations. Like the big war profiteers learned that they make a fuckload of money out of wars, right? And they're like, their problem now is like, damn it, it's so hard to like handle all this money that we got flowing in, but they love it. They're making money off of Ukraine. They're making money off of Gaza. They're making money like it's just awesome. And the greatest thing is like the same people that bomb the shit out of the countries have the companies that like help to rebuild. They get paid to rebuild. Like, this is awesome. Why the fuck aren't they gonna do that? Like, so like what I think we need to do is we need to get to the point where we say like, there's no right to kill any. If they're Hamas, there's no fucking right to kill any. Like, yeah, I don't want to kill women and children. I want to kill fucking soldiers. Like, we need to get to the point as a humanity. Like, that's not how we solve problems. We don't freaking kill people. God damn it. Like, like when we, like, why is it like, oh, Steve, you're a crazy man. Like, you're talking that we don't have to like come up with like spend like huge amounts of money and time and like human capital to find new ways to slaughter people. Like, we could actually talk to people. You're crazy. Like, fuck. Why is that crazy? Why am I the crazy person for saying that like we could solve problems without killing? God damn it. Like, when are we gonna like, I don't know. I think a lot of us in the world get that, but like the few people who are in power don't. But like it is a lot of us in the world. And if we get together and say like we're just not gonna like put up with that shit, like we could make a difference. It's just like I don't know how we get there, but we have enough of us to make a difference.
I think the tide is shifting again back to social media and images that you can see. And children are always a rallying cry for a lot of Americans, people in the West in general, to want to act, right? The whole, you guys remember the 80s? One of my big ballywicks is studying the satanic panic of the 80s and early 90s. That's all about protecting children from magical child molesters in schools, even though all the data on child molesting said it's probably somebody in the home or at least a close family member. But you got a whole movement that literally changed laws, that literally starts the groundwork to give prosecutors more power because judges were, as they said, too lenient. You know, this helps us with the war on drugs. That starts with this panic of teachers molesting students. Granted, it happened in a very small handful of cases, but most of it was just bullshit. But children is what we were protecting.
I mean, but that caring about children is bullshit too.
Right? We only care about certain kinds of kids, right?
Only care about certain kinds of kids. If you cared about kids, right, you would pay your teachers more, right, to educate your children.
Yep.
You would make sure children had food to eat. You would make it affordable to send children to early childhood education. You would not try to ban books. You wouldn't make it so expensive to send your kids to college if you cared about kids. You don't care about kids. That's just something to say, like Maude from The Simpsons. What about the children? Like, you don't care about the children.
No,
you don't. It's just convenient to say that you care about.
That's the first thing people say. All the killings plus, it's like, look, for me, it's killing.
Right.
For once, it's not our show that has a duck.
Sorry, that's my
Steve,
duck.
you have a duck, Steve?
Yeah, I got a duck.
Are you fucking with me?
I quieted the duck. I taught his bill.
There's a reason why Steve's camera doesn't work. And and it's because
I told you I work with other farms.
the real reason why he got in trouble
Oh,
because he was
you're right.
stealing ducks. He's Joe Exotic over there. Fucking Carol
hopefully without the
Baskin.
hair.
Carol Baskin got me banned from UMass Amherst.
That's an oddly good Joe Exotic.
Of all the references I didn't think I was gonna do this year, Tiger King was at least 4 of them. But sometimes
you having an unnatural allegiance to losers does not like you.
Thank you, Kat. He is popping up everywhere.
Cat Williams is taking over the internet with controversy.
First of all, Cat Williams, hilarious. That's just my personal opinion.
I agree.
But he's very thoughtful. You have to get past what you think he is and actually listen to what he's saying.
I think he lied about Harvey Weinstein trying to blow him.
Oh, he lied about that.
I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah. And maybe the number of books that he's read in a year. But other than that, I
mean, look.
I mean, I'm not a yeah.
Cat Williams
is wild.
He's rather entertaining. That is still right now one of the funniest interviews I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. But when he started saying that Harvey Weinstein tried to blow him in front of a bunch of people, I was like, no, I don't know about that, Cat.
Yeah, I don't.
Not that I'm a big Harvey Weinstein fan or anything, but
yeah, I was like, I don't think that happened.
He's like, oh, can you get me the short black guy, please? Oh, wear the little purple suit from Friday After Next. Yeah,
he was wild though. But if you haven't, people go check out Cat Williams stand-up.
I love
especially about his take on fast food commercial. I don't know if you've seen that, but he goes in on the Popeyes chicken lady. Full disclosure, my whole family hates the Popeyes chicken lady, and his stand-up about her is just chef's kiss.
Love that chicken from Popeyes.
Yeah. Oh man.
Did you know if you gave Jemima a new haircut?
Yeah.
If you gave Aunt Jemima a new haircut and Ford Focus is no longer Aunt Jemima.
God.
If she has those two things. I think they got rid of that black woman at Popeyes as the spokesperson.
He did, Dr. Claw, he did call her a slave, and it was hilarious. He called her the slave bitch is what is actually what he said.
Love that chicken from Popeyes. We should have another drop for that whenever we want to call someone a coon. So Steve did the smartest thing ever by not showing his face. Because his job of Steve, we see you're on a podcast. I've never seen a podcast in my life, sir.
How do you know it was me?
Kim, you fucked up. You did your hair and shit. Nah, you fucked up.
I mean, the worst that could happen, I do this shit for free, right? I probably dedicate 40 hours. I have a full-time job. Contrary to popular belief, I have a real job, I have a family and everything. I mean, you're gonna kick me off. I won't be appointed. Maybe I won't be reelected. It's town meeting. I don't know. Whatever. I'll still keep doing what I do, and I enjoy it. It is what it is.
She says that now. I have a friend. I'm not going to name her name, and she came on the show a bunch of times. Academic, and I'm not even going to talk what she speaks about because I don't want you guys to find her. But I was talking to her recently, and I was like, "Oh, you should come back on the show and talk." She goes, "No." She straight up said, She goes, "I might be looking for a new job," and oof.
Oh, wow.
I can't. So part of me felt good, like, yeah, like I'm that controversial.
Mhm.
Another part of me felt really horrible that somebody can't come on this show that is filled with dick jokes.
I mean, what else are we supposed to laugh at?
I don't know, but I just went and rearmed. Just for people watching this show, by the way, I did take your guys' advice, and I did add new drops to the soundboard. So all the things that we had agreed upon was going to be on the soundboard is on the soundboard. But there were limitations to the ones I can and can't use. So Yano says I can't be seen associating with Pog Chaser MLK in public. Steve, that's where we do an impersonation of MLK lusting after large white women.
Mhm.
It's not our best moment, but it's pretty fucking funny. In closing, I did have a whole closing question. Hold on. Oh, do either of you feel the recent ICJ verdict will have any effect on the current censorship we're seeing? Is this the end of Israel as the ultimate victim narrative that has been beneficial for their brutal occupation for decades? Who wants to go first? I picked Kim because you looked up. I can't see.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I'm assuming Steve is like tending to animals as he's got his hands on the chicken's ass, getting eggs. You know what I'm saying? So he's doing some farming shit.
Wow. No, I don't. I think that it will take some time for the world's perception on the way that Israel's handling things to change. May give a few people who were already thinking, like giving it pause for thought, but I mean, America's going to continue to America with, so at least in terms of looking at it from the American perspective, no, I don't think this will change things drastically. Unfortunately, nobody wants to hear things that are uncomfortable, and I think that's what this is for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm not sure it by itself is gonna have that much impact. And locally, like I was looking into seeing if that ruling could be helpful for the people who are arrested who are trying to use the necessity defense, like that they were trying to address the genocide and like address our university's collaboration with companies that make and send bombs that are being used as part of the genocide. In a broader scale, like I think it's like these wars there's so much, like there's systems that are not in equilibrium and so much potential for what could happen. Like, so I mean, if this ruling then impacts other events and leads to like efforts for reigning in Israel, maybe that could happen. Maybe Saudi Arabia will say, "Hey, okay, like cut this shit. We're gonna recognize you all and just like kill fewer people," or maybe like something like Israel will bomb Iran and Iran will be like, "Okay, fuck that shit." Then now it's all out. I don't know. Like it's I don't think the ruling itself will, but like other like impacts downstream, I think that are unpredictable. Well, so.
Well, look, thank you guys for taking the time to talk with me today and risk further persecution. I appreciate that. I really do, because you did it for free and you did it because this is something you guys believe in. So I applaud you. Thank you, the viewers, for checking out the show today. Please hit the like button on your way out. If you're a new viewer, hit subscribe and notifications button. If you're listening on Apple, hit subscribe and get access to the Champagne Room, where you can hear way more curse words, way more dick jokes, and I use this a lot more.
We coming for you, nigga.
Yep. So for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year, you too can become a patron. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. We'll be back Tuesday. I think we're doing a call-in show Tuesday. So if you guys have something you want to get off your chest, see, I said it right this time. Before I said if you have something you want to get on my chest, which is not right. But I said it right this time, so don't tease me in the comments. Or tease me in the comments. I don't give a shit. We'll be back. Me and MT. Maybe Pascal, I'm not sure, but definitely MT. And let's go out with some chill music. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. And we are out.